let's jump into a deep dive that's all about myth busting and uncovering some surprising trends. We're diving deep into the U.S. Hispanic market,
Okay.
but we're going way beyond just like basic demographics here, right?
Yeah.
We really want to understand how this market thinks,
Yeah.
shops, and how they're impacting the world of CPGs.
Right.
You know, those everyday products we're all using.
Absolutely.
To guide this deep dive, we've got a really interesting mix of market research reports and some articles.
Yeah.
And you know, one thing that really struck me going through all this is just the sheer size and influence of this market.
For sure.
We're talking over 65 million people.
Wow.
That's 20% of the U.S. population.
Huge.
And they're responsible for a huge chunk of the growth we see in the CPG industry. 16%.
It's massive. And you know what's really fascinating?
Yeah.
Is it's not just some niche group.
Right.
This is a market that's already a major force, and their impact is only going to grow.
Exactly. And to your point, one of the first things our sources emphasize is the danger of treating this market as a monolith. You know, I have to admit, I've been guilty of this myself. Yeah. You hear Hispanic market and you just think, okay, one big group, but the reality is so much more nuanced.
It really is.
Isn't it?
It is. Terms like acculturated and unacculturated are really starting to feel outdated. One of our sources even compares it to like trying to squeeze a multifaceted diamond into a square box.
I love that analogy.
Yeah.
It really highlights how limiting those labels can be.
Right.
So how do we move beyond those oversimplifications then?
Well, one of the articles we have uses this term, cultural affinity.
Okay.
And it's this idea that even if someone is very integrated into U.S. culture, those emotional and social connections to their heritage, they stay strong.
So, for example, we could have a third-generation Latina who primarily speaks English but still feels this deep connection to those family traditions around Dia de los Muertos, right?
Absolutely.
And that would influence her choices as a consumer.
For sure. She may be drawn to brands that acknowledge and celebrate those traditions, you know. Or maybe she's more likely to shop at stores that cater to those cultural preferences.
And that's where it gets really interesting for marketers because they need to understand those subtle but powerful influences.
Yeah.
Now, our sources also dig into the spending habits of this diverse market. And I was surprised by some of the findings. For example, fully unacculturated households spend over 20% of their income on groceries.
Wow, that's significant. That's significantly higher than the U.S. average.
Right.
And I think it speaks to a few things. One, larger family sizes are very common in these households, and there's often a really strong emphasis on fresh ingredients, home-cooked meals.
Right.
One of our research reports even highlights the importance of the kitchen as a social hub. You know, it's a place where family traditions are passed down
Wow, that's interesting.
through generations.
So it's not just about feeding more mouths, it's about investing in those cultural traditions and that sense of family connection.
Exactly.
Now, what about those who are fully acculturated? How do their CPG spending habits compare?
Well, their grocery spending tends to be a bit closer to the U.S. average,
Okay.
but they over-index in some other categories, particularly beauty and personal care.
Interesting.
Like, for instance, one report showed that they spend a whopping $10.3 billion annually.
Wow.
On skincare and fragrances.
That's a lot of face masks and perfume.
It is.
So even if their grocery list looks similar to non-Hispanics, they're really making a statement in these other CPG areas.
Absolutely.
It's another reminder that we just can't lump everyone together.
Right.
Now, speaking of making a statement, our sources really highlight the influence of Latinas in this market.
Oh, yeah.
58% of the Hispanic market, right?
That's right. A force to be reckoned with.
That's a force to be reckoned with.
It is.
And one thing that's interesting is how shopping is perceived, right?
Yes.
For a lot of Latinas, it's not just a chore.
Yeah.
It's a form of self-expression,
Right.
a way to connect with their identity, and even a social activity.
It is.
One article describes it as like a celebration of self.
Oh, I love that.
I love that too. So it's not just about checking items off a list. It's this much more emotional and engaging experience.
For sure.
But how does that translate into actual buying behavior?
So this segment is often called Latinistas, and they're known for their impulsiveness.
Okay.
They're more likely to be swayed by in-store displays, attractive packaging. But here's the twist.
Okay.
They're also fiercely loyal to brands that resonate with them culturally and emotionally.
So it's this really fascinating blend of spontaneity and deep-rooted loyalty.
It is.
Now, we can't talk about consumer behavior without acknowledging those generational shifts happening within the Hispanic market.
Right.
What are some key takeaways about millennials and Gen Z Hispanics and how they shop?
Well, they're digital natives, highly bilingual. They're comfortable navigating both English and Spanish language media.
Right.
Convenience and value are key drivers for them, and they're much more likely to shop at dollar stores, drugstores, and online channels. One of our reports even suggests that like those brick-and-mortar supermarkets are actually losing relevance for this generation.
Wow, that's a bold statement. So how are brands adapting to this digitally driven generation?
Right.
I imagine social media plays a huge role.
Absolutely. And it's not just about Facebook and Instagram anymore.
Right.
TikTok is a powerhouse for reaching younger Hispanics, particularly through Latina influencers who hold a lot of sway over this demographic.
Yeah.
One study even found that Hispanic audiences are twice as likely to buy products they discover on social media.
Wow. Twice as likely.
Twice as likely compared to the general population.
That's powerful.
That's huge.
So instead of relying on those broad national campaigns, they need to be creating content that speaks to the specific interests and passions of these younger shoppers, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They need to be thinking about the platforms where those shoppers are spending their time. It's not just about the message.
Right.
It's about the medium.
It's where it gets really strategic, because it's not enough to just understand the demographics. You have to understand the nuances of their digital lives, their preferred platforms, the influencers they trust.
For sure.
And what's interesting is that brands are getting even more granular with their marketing. They're using regional and local data to tailor their messages to specific communities, especially for those younger generations who are frequenting particular types of stores.
Right.
So it's about going beyond the broad strokes and really diving into the micro segments. It's like marketing is becoming a high-stakes game of chess where every move has to be carefully calculated.
That's a great way to put it.
All right, before we go any further down this rabbit hole of targeted marketing strategies, let's bring in a concrete example from our sources. The Hispanic Link survey really caught my eye. It emphasizes the importance of the in-store experience for this market, right?
Absolutely. That survey revealed that interactive displays, engaged staff who can speak to their needs, and a seamless connection between online and offline interactions are crucial.
Right.
For driving purchase interest and satisfaction.
So it's not enough to just have the right products on the shelves. It's about creating that shopping environment that feels welcoming, engaging, and culturally relevant.
Exactly.
It's a holistic approach where the in-store experience is just as important as the online presence.
Absolutely. And it's also important to remember that for many Hispanic consumers, shopping is a very social experience.
Yeah.
It's something they do with family and friends.
Yeah.
So that sense of community needs to be reflected in the way brands interact with them.
Right.
Both in-store and online.
Makes sense. Speaking of community, our sources also touch on how influential it can be, particularly for Hispanic teenagers.
Yes.
And we're not just talking about family here. We're talking about that all-important peer group.
Absolutely. Peer pressure plays a huge role in their buying decisions.
For sure.
Especially in categories like fashion and electronics. What their friends are wearing, what games they're playing, what's trending on TikTok.
Yeah.
It all matters.
So it's not just about what mom and dad approve of anymore.
Right.
It's about fitting in with that social circle, expressing their identity, and staying ahead of the trends.
Absolutely.
That's a lot for brands to navigate.
It is. And that's why we're seeing this shift toward building authentic online communities where Hispanic consumers can connect, share their experiences, and even influence each other's choices.
It's like creating a virtual plaza.
Exactly.
Where they can hang out, swap recommendations, and really feel like they belong.
Right.
And it's a strategy that's proving to be incredibly effective because these online communities not only drive sales, but they also provide valuable insights for brands.
Yeah.
Helping them understand the evolving needs and desires of this dynamic market.
It's a win-win situation.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, brands get access to real-time feedback.
Yeah.
And consumers get a space to connect and express themselves.
But before we get too carried away with the power of online communities, we need to take a break and come back for part 2 of our deep dive.
That's right. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still so much to explore. In part 2, we'll delve deeper into the rise of third-generation Latinx brands and their unique approach to marketing.
It's a topic that's near and dear to my heart, and I can't wait to unpack it with you.
Me too.
So stay tuned because our journey into this fascinating world of the U.S. Hispanic market continues.